In this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how I approach the market every single day. And I just want to make a video like this because I've never done this. But before I get into it, I want to say that there are two main people who have really influenced the majority of how I approach the market. The first one is Carmine Rosado. I know you can clearly tell that just by looking at my channel that he is a huge influence. If it was on a pie chart, his influence probably makes up of 70% of my trading. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that. I have learned so much from Carmine Rosado. He's the GOAT. Second person is this dude named Rizzo. I'm sure some of you have heard of him, but a lot of people have not heard of him because he's pretty low key and he kind of sits in the background. But that is where I really learned about all of the volume profile analysis and mainly just the volume profile and TPO chart analysis. That all comes from him. And the rest of everything that I know has come from just a ton of different resources where I've gathered information on my own across YouTube and the internet on order flow trading, etc. But I just wanted to make sure you guys knew who I learned from because, I want to make sure that those people get all the credit because they deserve it. But yeah, Carmine's probably like 70% of my foundation on trading. Rizzo probably makes up the other large percentage, and then the rest is just from me finding stuff elsewhere. But so there's three main things that I'm going to talk about in this video. The first one is going to be the context. The second one is going to be me finding a trade. And then a third thing I'm going to talk about is what happens when a trade actually sets up. So to jump right into context, this is what I'm looking for every single day. I have the same approach to the market every single day. So what I want to do in my trading every single time is I want to make sure that I am aligned with the higher time frame. I want to be aligned with the higher time frame. I want to be going with the momentum that is happening on a higher time frame. So how I do this is I'm looking at a 30-minute, a daily chart, 30-minute to a daily, and this is where I'm finding, supply and demand levels, highs and lows, obviously. And then I also use the volume profile a lot. Mainly, I would say I look at the higher time frame. Right now, I look at the contract profile, and that's what I've been enjoying so far. But also, I will look at the daily too, highs and lows, and just find significant points of interest using the daily profile. So using all these things, supply and demand levels, edges of value, LVNs, HVNs, overnight highs and lows, daily highs and lows, weekly highs and lows, all those things play a role in me developing context prior to the open of the session. And all of these things together basically allows me to put together a plan for the session that I'm about to trade. And on top of that, I'm going to be obviously keeping in mind what is happening with the calendar. Are there any events I got to be aware of, usually at 9 Central Time or, whatever. You guys probably know the deal with that. So using all of these things, this is what allows me to create a pre-market plan. And yeah, just to show you guys, I drop a pre-market plan in my Discord every single session or before every single session. And this is how I trade. So that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get aligned with the higher time frame and the bigger picture. And then what I do is with this, I then am looking for a trade, obviously. So that looks like this. So the next part is how do I find a trade during the session? So the first thing I want to see is price trade at the key level, or I want to see a reaction off of the level of interest. Sometimes I will take a trade at the level of interest if I get enough confirmations or if I get enough context that it's going to be a good trade. But I would say majority of the time I actually like trading after a reaction has happened at the level of interest. But it just depends on the situation and like what really happens. Sometimes, you might spot a good amount of absorption at a level of interest that kind of tells you it's going to be a good place to take an entry. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but you get the aggression off the level of interest that gives you, an LVN with a good location to take a continuation setup. It just depends what really happens. So basically, I'm mainly watching, I would say, I'm watching how the session profile develops, and I'm also looking for how is effort being rewarded. Is there a ton of effort in the market that's not being rewarded? Is it at a key level? Is it off of a key level? And basically I'm taking all these things and I'm trying to formulate a thesis for me to take a trade. And on top of that, I also do watch the VIX. I would say a VIX is a great confluence. I don't necessarily have to do something that aligns with the VIX, but I would say majority of the time, I definitely want to be using the VIX as a confluence unless it's not significant. So when I say not significant, I would just basically mean, is the VIX positive or negative around 1.5 to 2%? If the VIX is not moving in any significant way, then I do not care really what the VIX is doing. I would rather let the order flow tell me what to do. But like if the VIX is down like 5-6%, for example, then I would probably rather I'd probably rather look for a long setup. Vice versa, if the VIX is positive 6 or 7%, that's going to tell me it's probably smarter to play shorts. So really just trying to develop a thesis based off of many variables at once. But those are the main things. I would say the main thing is definitely the profile and effort versus reward. The VIX is another great thing to look at for me. And that is mainly how I approach whenever we either react off of my key levels or we're trading at the key levels that I have developed in my pre-market plan. So now let's just say there's a trade setup that I'm interested in. So what it's going to look like is it's either going to be, like I said, a reaction at or off of my planned level of interest. So this is the first thing that absolutely needs to happen. It has to be a reaction at or off of a planned level of interest. If there's no reaction at or off of my planned level of interest, then there's no reason for me to take any trades. I don't want to go outside of my process and start to try to get overly creative and basically force something that doesn't align with my plan, because the whole point of my plan is to align myself with the higher time frame. So me going against my plan is really me going against the higher time frame outlook, and that is never something that I want to do, because that is going to result in lower quality trades. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. The next thing that needs to happen is I need to have a clear location to enter. I need to have a clear location to put my risk or my stop loss. And then I also like to have clear targets. So these three things are absolutely crucial. And if I don't have one of these three things, usually I would say the entry and where to place my risk is obviously the most important. If I don't have one of those, then it's something I want to avoid. I've found that over all of my data from trading, my best trades, I can actually get a smaller stop loss than my max loss per trade. So typically I'm risking 4 points on ES. All of my best trades and most of my winning trades, I will be able to get my stop loss tighter than that. Usually, like, based on my data, I found that my best trades are going to have a stop loss between like 2.5 to 3 points, usually under 4 points. If I'm putting a trade on and I have to have a full 4-point stop for ES, usually it means I'm getting a bad entry price, or I might be forcing the trade altogether. And that is just something I've noticed. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that at all, but that is something I've seen in my data, and it's definitely interesting to me. But I absolutely need a clear location to enter. So just for the sake of this example, I'll just paint a picture with the low volume node continuation setup, because that's very clear. But obviously you need the low volume area, and then that gives you a clear zone where you want to potentially look for an entry, right? So I have my clear area where I can say I want to look for an entry here. If I'm incorrect, it's going to basically sweep through the low volume area, essentially. So now whenever I have a location and a place to put my risk, or at least an idea of both of those things, this is when I'm looking for confirmation to actually enter the trade. So same thing, we'll use the low volume node setup as the example. So like confirmations for that particular trade could be, all right, whenever we trade into that low volume area, what is happening on the order flow that can tell me that this is going to lead to continuation higher? The first thing I want to see is like bids filling, for example. That's a good indication that bids are going to be supporting price. And on top of that, if I see bids step in and fill, and then that is followed by some amount of aggression in the market, that is going to be enough confirmation for me to enter the trade for in this example, to the upside. And then once I'm in the trade, usually I can either get a better idea of where my stop loss can go. So in that particular example, if I paint the picture for you, let me see if I can just draw it. Maybe that would help a little bit. So like, let's say we have a move like this. There's an area of low volume right here. Let's say price comes in here, and in this area, bids step in here and they fill. So let's just say this is a bid right here. Let's say the bid gets filled, and then we come back like right here. Let's say these bids get filled. Please ignore my awful handwriting. I'm terrible at writing on this app, but let's say these bids step in here, they get filled, and then I get some aggression that takes us out of the low volume area. I might be long right here, and I might be able to say, all right, if I'm incorrect, my stop loss is actually, instead of going below the low volume area, now I might decide to put it below this low that we created right here. So this is when I say, like, I can usually get my risk below 4 points, which is my max risk in these conditions per trade. So like I might be able to get like a 2 to 3 point stop loss on this particular trade to take this thing up higher. So that's just a simple example for the sake of this video, but like that is normally what I want to see. I absolutely need a clear entry, a clear risk, and I need confirmation signals to actually take the trade. Sometimes you don't even get bids that fill. And whenever that happens, I'm just usually going to stay away from it, because if there's no one supporting price here, then a lot of the times it can just get swept right through, and it can turn into a potential inverse low volume node setup, when I basically look to treat this as like a break and retest setup, but that's going to be a whole nother video. But anyway, so that is mainly what I'm looking for in terms of an actual setup that happens. Now, while this is happening, I want to see, is VIX aligned with my thesis? Or is the trade going to be aligned with VIX? Is the trade going to be aligned with other things that I'm seeing? Is there data already out, or is there data coming out soon? And I'm taking all these things into account before I put the trade on in the first place. But usually all of that analysis, I can do that within like 1 to 2 minutes. And I've also found that my best trades, I usually have basically like a 1 to 2 minute window to really put the trade on. That's just what I've noticed. So whenever I'm in a trade now, as far as how do I manage the trade, as the trade plays out, I want to see potential places that form new points of invalidation. So like as this particular trade, so as this is playing out, maybe we get a lot of buying, maybe we get a ton of buying right here that takes us up, and I'm already in the trade, obviously with my entry right here. Maybe after this happens, who knows, maybe we even form another low volume area, or maybe there's just a ton of aggression that I can say, all right, if sellers take us back below this area now, maybe that's where I can say, all right, this trade is probably not going to work out. So I do not trail my stop losses until I take at least one TP. So like say we get one, say my first target's up here. Say I get first target, normally I'm taking 50% or I'm taking 75% off at my first target. Sorry, all right. So every time I'm taking at least half off on my first target, and then I will hold runners for a further target, as far as what happens afterwards. That's what my second target's going to be the rest of my trade. But this is how I do it. So like as soon as I have the first 50% or 75% of my trade off, that is when I can start trailing my stop loss on my runners. So for example, that's whenever I would say, all right, if this aggression gets taken, then I can move my stop loss like maybe here, or maybe there's another low volume area that I can move it there. And basically I'm trailing the runner stop, but I don't trail my normal stop. But I do go break even on my stops if my trade goes at least 8 points. Usually maybe I'll do like 7, 8 points in profit. if my trade makes it to 7 to 8 points in profit, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to have my stop loss on the whole trade at break even. And that's how I like to do it. So that's what I like to do. I'm break even at 7 to 8 points in profit. As soon as that first target gets hit, I'm starting to trail my runners. 9 times out of 10, if it's a good trade, I'll be able to get all out without even having to worry about my runners stop. So let me just go into targets. Real quick. So for my targets, which I kind of forgot to write out here, is for my targets, I'm always targeting a high or a low to the downside. And usually that is what I'm targeting for the first target. But for the second target, that's where I get a little bit more dynamic and creative. And a lot of the times for my runners, I will get out on any form of a volume burst that is in my favor. So in this case, I might not have a number in mind for the price that I want to get out at. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but a lot of the times what I like to do for my runners or for the rest of my trade is any burst of strong volume in my favor, that's when I get out on. And that also can go with the first target as well. It just depends if I have a clear number or usually I target limit orders that I'm looking for my first target. So I always am looking to get out on either highs or lows or strong bursts of volume. And I found that getting out directly after a strong burst of volume tends to work out very well for me. And when I look back at it on the chart, my fills look really good. So that's just how I do it. And that's how I get all out of a trade. So if I didn't stop out for break even, that's how I do it. And really that is my entire approach to the market. This is exactly what I'm doing every single day. I'm looking for context. I'm trying to get aligned with the higher time frame. I want price to basically react or pretty much validate my plan for the session. And then after that, then I'm looking at clear entry points, clear risk. I'm looking for targets. And then once I have the idea, then I'm looking for confirmations to actually take the trade. And that is what I do every single day. So yeah, if you guys got value out of that video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Obviously like the video. Let me know if you guys trade similar or how you trade in the comments. Also, if you want to join Order Flow Mafia, which is a order flow Discord, it's free. It's in my description. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.